is about investigative journalism, especially focusing on crime and corruption in the Middle East and North Africa, which has been for the last 15 years the worst region in the world in terms of press freedom and safety of journalists. With me on the panel is Alia Ibrahim. She's the co-founder of SIRAJ Media, and she's the CEO of SIRAJ, and she's also head of the investigative unit. SIRAJ is a member center of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. To my right is Mohammad Bassiki. He's the co-founder and executive director of the Syrian Investigative Journalism Accountability Project, SIRAJ, which also is an OCCRP member center. We have Rasha on Zoom, appearing in a few minutes. She's the co-founder and editor-in-chief of timesforpalestine.com and former senior fellow at the Center for Washington Policy in Washington, D.C. Rasha was the main character telling the BBC story that she worked on with OCCRP, BBC OCCRP, which we are going to talk about, Captagon smuggling in the Middle East. I myself am the senior editor for the MENA region at OCCRP, and before that, I'm the co-founder and the first executive director of Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism, which I ran for 15 years before stepping down, moving to OCCRP, and working with everybody that passed through Arish. So it's an amazing partnership. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to start by basically showing you a video. And the video is going to lead us into a discussion on how SIRAJ and OCCRP investigated the Central Bank of Lebanon Governor Riad Salame, who for 30 years was the untouchable, but when Lebanon had its economic and political and financial meltdown in 2019, he was one of the main contributors to the collapse in the economy and to turning over 65% of Lebanese into poor people. I'm going to show you a small video that I hope will give you the main spirit of that work we did, but it will also show you how we worked on it, what SIRAJ got us and what we got SIRAJ. Sorry. Okay. Internet. It's not coming. Can you play it, maybe? We need help from the tech team. It's not working.
I don't know. It's in internet, this one.
Sorry?
It's in internet.
It's in internet? Can you help us? I don't know what's happening. So, sorry about this technical glitch. I don't know if we should start by asking Alia, or we should wait a minute until we get the video working. Has any one of you worked in the Middle East?
Tu sai quello che...
It's on the internet. We share.
Yeah, but I don't know what's happening here. مش عم بشتغل. I think our governments are trying to silence us here. Here in Perugia. No internet. I don't know what the problem is. I'm really sorry. Don't run away. ولك من وين أجيبها؟ لا. Run diagnostics. ماشي؟
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's not working.
It was a crazy story to do. Everybody told us, like, seriously, this is the most untouchable man in Lebanon. He ended up being like the gatekeeper, and not only the gatekeeper, he was a partner in the corruption from day one. When we started investigating Riad Salame, Central Bank Governor of Lebanon, Salame was not on our radar as a potential corrupt figure. Comes 2019, this is when the Central Bank Governor decided to impose an unofficial and illegal capital control. Everybody in Lebanon was overnight poor. No warning, nothing. Your money in the bank is locked and you can't access it. Pretty much we brought this gossip to our colleagues at OCCRP, and they used the tools to actually figure out proofs. And I think it's important to mention here, we really, in terms of how far the story could go inside Lebanon, we had reached a dead end. We needed a stronger research team to help us, and based in Europe.
So when we started investigating Riad Salame, we had a tip from a source. If you want to find the wealth of Riad Salame, you need to look at the sun. So we have a tool called Aleph. It's a database of databases where you can search for company documents, property records, procurement data, and so on. What we quickly found is that this son was the director of numerous companies in Luxembourg and Belgium and Germany and different countries around Europe. Once we started digging into these companies, we could find the assets that they owned, which were usually commercial properties, and then track that from the asset to the company, and then above that to the owner. And that revealed to us that Riad Salame owned these companies. So that was our kind of hook.
He claims he had wealth equals to $23 million, but what we were able to just show in 5 countries. In Europe, it was property worth 150 million. Here is the power of an international organization collaborating with a local partner.
What I really like about this one is that this is a story we brought to OCCRP, and it empowered us and it took us to the next level.
So Alia is now going to tell us about where the idea came from and the impact it created at home and abroad, and how local media bullied Daraj, because the local media had been on the payroll of the central bank governor for decades, taking millions in advertisements to shut up. And we're going to talk about where Riad Salame is now, because unfortunately he's
in his villa.
In his villa.
First, thank you OCCRP for the beautiful video also. It's good to see it, actually. Anyway, I think the video explained a little bit how it went in terms of investigation, but I really wanted to stress what it meant for Lebanon, this specific story. The background, just a little bit of background. Riad Salame was for 30 years considered one of the most respected figures in the banking sector, elected the Banker of the Year after year. Of course, this was like a PR stunt, but still, he was in the Lebanese ecosystem. He was considered one of the good ones. In just one mandate before 2019, he was elected he was popularly elected the most respected as a candidate for presidency in Lebanon, secular, away from all the political divisions. He really was not considered a corrupt person, like really the protector of the economy beyond any kind of suspicions. So in October 2019, there was a 6 cents tax that was imposed on the Lebanese, the WhatsApp tax. And the Lebanese took the streets very quickly into large-scale protests across the country. something we have rarely seen at this scale around Lebanon. The banks, and at the time everybody trusted Salame, said that because they were scared there's going to be huge withdrawal from the banks, imposed an unofficial and illegal. First, at the beginning, it was just a bank's shutdown. And they closed the banks for 2 months, which meant that really millionaires, not only, I mean, the middle class really suffered, poor people, it was devastating, but even very rich people became poor overnight. So it was something, nothing, the Lebanese have not seen even in the worst of times. Then 2 months later, in December, this is like the banks closing turned the protest from being about taxations to about let's figure out ways to just take the money out of the bank. And then in December, there was a small piece of information, a tip that actually came of one of the pro-regime, usually, and he said he had a tip that $6 billion have been taken out of the country during the capital control, which meant that PEPs, business people related to PEPs, were able to take their money out while the money of the Lebanese were locked in. At this point, there was a lot of rumors, a lot happening, but like nothing to really work on. Central bank said they're investigating. Everybody said, like, this guy is investigating, so we have nothing to worry about. But then in December also, Dima Sadegh here, she's a TV personality. She gave us a 23 pages report that we later knew it became known as the Crystal Credit Report. That at the beginning we did not really look at thoroughly, but then a week later, I remember I was reading it. First, it was really very well written. It was not what we usually get. It looked like a very well written report with with screenshots from banks, with names that it was a very coherent document that said that the personal wealth of the governor in European banks was $2 billion in cash, and showing pictures of that. The only problem with that document is that it did not have a cover face, so we could not source it. And we spent a couple of months trying to source it. We couldn't get anywhere. It was written in French, so I was in France for something else, but then I showed it to some sources there, and I was advised to just let go because it showed that the central bank governor, through companies that he owns with his brother and with his assistant, were funneling the money of the Syrian regime, which was under sanctions at the time. So it was really not just the money; it was also showing associations with very a lot of political figures. We couldn't do anything with that document. 3 months passed, we couldn't source it, nothing happened. And then in April 2020, so an account on Twitter publishes the report. And again, we couldn't do anything because we could not source it. It was just like something on Twitter. And then the central bank governor went on TV and said, I'm going to sue the French company who did that, and he gave us a name. And that was, I think, the big mistake he did in his life. And he kept speaking for an hour about the $23 million. I'm a rich man because when I took over 30 years ago, I had $23 million in my bank account. And this fortune grew, and sue me, I'm a rich man, and I became richer. There's nothing in the law that forbids that. So on that afternoon, actually, I called Rana. What we needed on that day was just to know if Crystal Credit, because he said this is a company that's very famous for its bad actions, and it's sued by everybody. On that day, I called Rana and I said, can you just give us, we tried to find anything on that company that says it's a bad company. Can you please confirm it's a respectable company? We contacted them, I think because they have client protection, they wouldn't confirm or deny. But we ran, OCCRP told us it's quite a solid company. That was all we needed on that day. And then we did a video just saying what it is and saying we've had this document for 3 months, couldn't do anything about it, but said that we don't know if it's true or not, but this is what it's saying. And then we wrote an editorial, and in which we said, probably we're not going to be able to get to a serious solution, like confirm that, but we will investigate the assets of Riad Salame. And this is where we called OCCRP again. And this is where we started the investigation that's what Tom was talking about. We published 2 stories that at the beginning were the most important thing, and that's first we proved that he has assets, but the most important investigation was the second one, because it was showing that there was definitely conflict of interest, definitely violations of the money and credit law, which was protecting him at that time. Fast forward, today, Riad Salame, first, the work of Daraj and OCCRP is mentioned by name in the document of the French prosecutor as what led to this investigation. Sanctions have happened, but the more important and interesting part is that this is leading to 2 other big investigations, one concerning the head of the, first, many private banks who were also involved in many of the fraud that was taking place, but also the Prime Minister of Lebanon, who during 2016, when financial engineerings were taking place in Lebanon, had received a big amount of money from the governor. So there are at least 3 other big investigations happening. It's very slow, obviously, but yeah, that's it.
And you were taking money from Soros and working for Hezbollah at the same time?
attack on us because the campaign against us, we've been called a lot of names. And the mainstream media in Lebanon never reports on the story, because all the TV stations in Lebanon, actually they say we're lying. They say this is part of a campaign to yes, it's all political. We are pro Hezbollah, and that's why we're attacking. And Hezbollah attacks us for being pro Soros, and it gets a little bit messy. But the bottom line is nobody in Lebanon is happy, and everybody hates us right now. But
and he still walks.
And he can't travel. That's a good thing. But his social life is okay, and he's living in his villa. And actually, he invites people, and people go, but he can't travel. Well, and his money is frozen.
If you know Carlos Ghosson Atin al-Hada, you know Carlos Ghosn, the guy from Nissan. He also ended up in Lebanon, which is his country, because Lebanon does not extradite people. So. I'm going to take you on the next story, which we did with BBC. And this was a very, very difficult piece of work. It took 1.5 years. We published this story, and I provide the link. This is the 55-minute documentary in English, and I really encourage those of you interested in the Captagon and in Syria and in how drugs are, supporting dictators, to look at it, because these networks exist everywhere. We also did a small story with BBC, and this was the version in Arabic. Rasha is going to talk to us later about the impact, because this investigation really did a lot of good work and good impact. The only bad thing was that the Syrian regime fired the local correspondent and the cameraman/TV reporter in Syria to basically show that they were unhappy with BBC. And of course, they called BBC all sorts of names. They didn't talk about OCCRP. So when we began the story, I had a tip from local activists that there is a spate and increase in fighting between the Jordanian army and the Syrian sort of army, which is backed by Bashar Assad's brother, who runs the 4th Division, which is the elite forces that look after the president. These attacks were happening across the Syrian-Jordanian border because, we're a neighbor country. And the sophistication of these smugglers was increasing, and it was showing to a hidden war between Jordan and the 4th Division. So this is how we started the investigation. Together with 4 or 5 reporters, we put together a team and started looking for names of smugglers. and where these smugglers are basically hiding, and then we were looking who was in control of those local regions. It was very, very important for us because there was a real increase in smuggling operations, and they started using sophisticated ways of carrying it, not just pigeons and donkeys and sheep, but now they were going after drones. These smuggling operations had increased tenfold since the Syrian regime took over the south of Syria, which is the neighbor of Jordan. So it means they are now in control of that border itself. This is exclusive footage we got from the Jordanian army. And here you can see the smugglers running back when they were shot at. But of course, negotiating the right to access footage was another battle, which I will tell you about. We basically went after the 4th Division because it is the most important security agency in Syria, and it is linked to the trade, as we were able to establish in this investigation. The smugglers were also operating with the backing of the 4th Division, and this is one of the key leaders in the south. And as you can see, this is a security security ID that was issued by the intelligence, which also is part of the 4th Division. Maher is the brother of the president, and this guy is the director of his office and head of security inside the 4th Division, but he is one of the key players that have been facilitating the connection between the smugglers and the Captagon production. The Captagon has become so important to the Syrian economy in the war now that it's become the lifeline of that regime, and it is being used to oppress the citizens for the last 13 years. Recent reports estimate that Syria might be earning as little as 34 billion and as much as 57 billion a year from Captagon smuggling. Hezbollah, which is Iran's proxy, is also involved in this trade, and it is very powerful in Lebanon, in Iraq, and in Yemen, and of course in Syria, and it also is benefiting from this trade because it needs to sustain its own connections. And these two guys here, this guy is the guy whose identity I just showed you, and this guy is the local guy that connects him to Hezbollah in the Beqaa Valley in Lebanon. Of course, who are the victims? All the Arab world are victims because now Captagon is the big, big challenge facing at least 7 Arab countries. The Jordanian army officers are also the victims because they are being shot at and fired and are being subjected to an organized military advancement. There is reconnaissance, there is advanced surveillance, using very sophisticated weapons and drones. It's very, very, very much an organized trade. Okay, we're not going to talk about the victims, we're going to talk about the operation mode, and for anybody who wants to work in the Middle East, this is very crucial. When I went to the BBC, I said, you know, we have this story, would you be interested? They said yes, but you have to secure access, you know, unlimited access and privileged access to the no man's land. We have to be able to embed with the Jordanian army. So it took like 4 months to convince the generals at the security that this would be something useful because they were bearing the brunt of it. But I remember going to a meeting where I had like 5 big generals from different agencies at the table, and the first thing I said, what do you want out of this investigation? And they said, we want you to show that Jordan is alone fighting this war, and we want you to show how difficult it is to be able to deal with humanitarian and political. And I said, okay, we want unlimited access, and we want you to tell us which rules of engagement do you use when you embed journalists. And they said the British rules of engagement. I said, fine, we are happy to use the British rule of engagement. And we constantly had to negotiate when they allowed us into this no man's land. We constantly had to negotiate with a minder who was with us. He constantly was looking over our backs. We could not film anybody with their face. We had to take all the footage from the back. The biggest problem for them was actually how will Rasha and myself as females embed in an all-male army. They said, we don't have toilets for women and we don't have shared space for you to sleep. I said, don't worry, we will lock ourselves up in a little tent and we can use bottles, we'll manage. Anyway, so we were able to go in. We also had a snag when the nice general who was open-minded left and were replaced by a very narrow, focused mind, but then we had again to call people up there who were helping us. It was very impossible to go with the anti-drug enforcements because they were really worried about us being killed in the process of following them as they were busting people. It was also very interesting because we came across really very interesting people. We had to interview a smuggler in the Beqaa Valley. At the end, we did not go because it became too dangerous. So we had to send the crew to interview that guy and record him, and we were talking to him from the hotel room because we thought they would like basically bust us, kidnap us, and then ask for ransom. We interviewed a guy in Jordan, and he came, he's the smuggler. His condition was like, you set up everything, and then I come in, and I will not show you anything. He came in, and I'll show you his photo with sunglasses wrapped around his mouth with a headdress. So he was like, we were talking to ghosts. Everybody in this investigation did not want to be named by name. That was another big problem. A Syrian defector from the 4th Division met us in London. He wouldn't go by his name. There was a local activist in Sweden who was helping us. He wouldn't go by his name. This poor man was able to send me a phone to Jordan that had all the footage of this guy with the identity card and how he was terrorizing the locals. The minute he got to Jordanian border, he told somebody, I have a phone with me that has some terrorist movies on it. He got picked up by the Jordanian security at the border. I was called in, and we had to negotiate access to that film. My life was now in danger, but I said, you know, it's not my phone. That person has to collaborate if he wants to collaborate. So it took also time to convince this guy. I said, you know what? These guys work with the Americans and the Israelis, and they will access the phone and they will not give it to us. So let's give them the name if we are sure it has nothing that could be used against us. So it was like really every day was a struggle in negotiating with these people, but finally they never opened it. It never opened, and until today it did not open for a strange reason, even though they have hacked me 6 times. We also had to basically escort a Lebanese anti-drug squad. Nobody in Lebanon would really talk about Hezbollah being part of that smuggling ring because they were at the mercy of Hezbollah in Lebanon. The only person that really accepted to talk about Hezbollah was a guy called Ashraf Rifi, and he was able to tell us about the power of Hezbollah. So basically, as I said, I shared some of the most important things, but we really had a big problem because the smuggling was intensifying during winter when there was fog, and the cameras would stop picking up, you know, shadows moving, or in sandstorms because it's an open desert. And on the 2 times we were granted that access, in the middle of winter and in the height of summer, fog did not come and sandstorms did not come. We only had fog as we left the area on our last shooting day. But then somebody from the Jordanian army volunteered also indirectly to help us and took footage for us when it's so bad in the fog times that you don't see a finger in front of you and you just get lost looking around you. Basically, we were able to access a dossier with 600 pages connected to a big smuggler called Hassan Duqqo in Lebanon, and this 600-page investigation showed us the whole networks of the gangs that were collaborating and how they were collaborating. This guy, of course, has been indicted and is now serving a jail sentence. We also interviewed a guy in Essen in Germany. He's the prosecutor who was also telling us about Syrians he investigated and who were sentenced in Germany for being part of the drug cartel, but he could not basically appear on the camera because he was also worried about his life. He's been doing that for 20 years. We were able to reveal the key leaders that were sanctioned by the US, the UK, and the EU for their role in the alleged smuggling. This is, for example, the bust in Malaysia that led us to Hassan Duqqo, the guy who has been now sentenced in Lebanon. This is the 600-page document that links all the networks. That was very, very crucial in the investigation. This is the shipment manifest that shows the connections between the whole mafia. So I'm not going to go more into this, but I want to show you some of the faces. The smuggler is missing. I don't know where he went, but I wanted you to see the smuggler. I'm sorry, something happened to my computer. And now we're going to go over to Rasha. Rasha is with us. What do I do now?
Yes, Rana, I am. Can you see my screen?
Rasha, we would have liked you to be with us.
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen? All right, perfect. Okay, hello. It's very nice to be with everybody today, and specifically with Rana, the person who actually created the investigative journalism in the Middle East and still guarding over it. My name is Rasha Qandeel. Back then, when we had the film, I was the lead reporter of the BBC film, both in Arabic and in English. And some of the adventures that Rana has been telling you now, I'm going to show you in pictures. I would really like you guys to watch the film. This is a link to it in English, and this is the number of views, and this is the film in Arabic, and this is 2 million views, which is really a big deal on Arabic TV. So the story started when we've decided, the BBC and the OCCRP, to collaborate, and we started from Jordan. We started from Jordan because we had thousands of kilometers in no man's land on the borders between Jordan and Syria, and the rules of engagement have just been changed from shoot to stop to shoot to kill. That means that any moving object on the no man's land, the buffer land between Jordan and Syria, would be shot at and killed. These are basically the statistics that we wanted to show off in front of you about today. But let me just stop you here for a second, because this is what I intended to start with. This is a big salute to our colleagues in the Palestinian journalists who are working now under fire, and every journalist behind bars, specifically in Egypt and other countries, who imprison journalists. Back to the film. This is the article that was written by the producer and director of the BBC film, and it encapsulates what we have in the 55 minutes film. The Global Investigation Journalism Network had kindly named the investigation as one of the best in 2023. All of the other information that Rana's mentioned, I really don't want to bore you with again, but we're talking about cross-border crimes. We're talking about organized cross-border crimes, and all the fingers are pointing at the Syrian elite division, the 4th division, and the brother of Bashar al-Assad, Maher al-Assad. And I'm really sorry to tell you that the biggest result we've got out of this film is that this regime is not under sanctions at all. It's just the Syrian people paying the price of that. Let's get to the fun bits anyways. So we started from Jordan. All the pictures are true, and this is where I am. So basically, the high-risk team and the risk assessment had to be made for 6 countries in a trade that is not ruled by law, definitely, and it has numberless of people carrying weapons. It's militias running the illicit trade of Captagon in the region. So we started on the borders in somewhere called Qom al-Raf. This is where Qom al-Raf is, and it's on the very, very, very edge of the borders between Jordan and Syria. You can basically see Suwaida around 100 meters. So with bare eyes, you can actually see it. And this is how close Suwaida is, this bit. And we had to drive, me and Rana, the producer, and the best camera person in the world, Miguel. This is actually a 5-team work. So we had to drive every day from Amman to the rare area that we had to shoot this film in. And it's hundreds of kilometers. Every day we had to drive backward and forward. And then when you get into the borders, you enter a military zone, so you have to drive another hour and a half. So this is just to give you an example of how much risk assessment and how much effort this was put on the film. We were on a tank being taken to the front line. After talking to the people there, the generals are very, very scared to show any detail, and they wouldn't really talk much about the smuggling attempts, but we were lucky enough to at least to see one happening, and we've seen it afterwards on the screens at the control room, like Rana showed your good selves. Of course, we were driving ourselves, because if I am talking and driving, citing what I have to say in both languages, it has to be me driving, because the camera person would be on the other side. So most of the film, I was actually driving thousands of kilometers with Rana at the back, or Rana driving and I'm at the back. This was the smuggling attempt that we were lucky enough to see in the summer. We were embedded with the Jordanian army twice, once in the summer and once in the winter, and we were embedded with the Lebanese army. I'm not really very good with being embedded with armies, living my whole career life, usually with militias. So it was a different kind of risk assessment to be done. To be embedded with an army, that means that they limit your access to everything. So yeah, that was one of the operations that happened, and the tackling of this operation. And then we had to drive before dawn to go back to Amman to watch the operation on the control room. And before that, we've spoken to a Jordanian military intelligence, and he was really freaked out about us showing anything of how they deal with smugglers, specifically that most of the smugglers on the borders are underage. So the Syrian smugglers are using minors underage, because when they get killed there, nobody would claim their bodies, which is another horrible story. This is the guy that Rana was trying to show you. This is the first smuggler that I met face to face, and we prepared for him to come, and then he came like this, so was nothing showing of his face or identity. We were very keen to keep it this way, and we even changed the voice a little bit of the people that we felt were most vulnerable to be recognized and caught. This is the operation that we saw by eye. This is actually from the operation control room, very near to Al Mafraq, where we shot most of the film. Al Mafraq is a very far, very close to the Syrian borders. We started putting on the links together, so everything was pointing that the Syrian Force Division, they are aware of what's going on the Jordanian borders, and therefore we tried to look for the links, the leads in between, to get to know who the middlemen are. This is Maher al-Assad, by the way, Bashar's brother. The decision was that we're going to go back. We spent almost a month embedded with the army in Jordan, but the decision was that we need to take other shots in the winter where the fog is high, and when the fog is high or there is a sandstorm in the summer, these are the two perfect moments for the smugglers to try to attempt to cross the borders. So the living conditions in this place are very hard. So imagine if you have guards, and those guards cannot be picked from the same tribes living in the same area, because the loyalty would be to the family rather than to the army. They went round and round in Jordan trying to, not to talk about this topic, but it was actually one of the points that we managed to get. And then we went to Paris, where our very amazing activist friend now, this is the very young Syrian, amazing guy that provided us with the phone of Rajif al-Hout, from which we started actually getting the links and the leads. This is the idea of Rajif al-Hout, and for those of you who can read Arabic, it says here exactly that it's the intelligence division. That means it's connected to the 4th division, which is the most elite division that's run by Maher al-Assad. The loss of this ID inside the phone and the WhatsApp, as you can see, this is a military intelligence. This is the film translating the name and the branch. The important thing was Rajif al-Hout used to speak regularly with somebody called Abu Hamza, and this Abu Hamza guy was the only lead that we could link to Hezbollah. Everybody was scared to death to talk about Hezbollah, even in Lebanon. So this was the lead that Hezbollah is, or at least individuals might be involved. To be precisely accurate, we could not prove by clear-cut evidence that Hezbollah was involved, but we could prove that there were individuals that probably turned a blind eye to some of the operations that were busted. We've also got voice notes between the two. As you can see, this is the subtitles of what we've heard, but we could never put our hands on the phone. The phone got from one hand to another, and we paid dearly for this mistake because one of us should have gone and picked the phone themselves.
Rasha?
Then we decided to go to Idlib. Sorry.
I'll have to stop you in a minute or a minute and a half.
Okay. Anyhow, so we've managed to hear from people in Idlib, in Halab, and then we went ourselves to Lebanon, and we got this interview with somebody from Al-Aqsa Brigades, and this is supposedly connected to the Syrian regime. He said some interesting stuff. We've also went to Germany, as Rana said. After Germany, we found evidence that the links are as closer than we think. We went back to Lebanon and we ran we were embedded with the army, but then we went to Hermel, which is the most dangerous area in Lebanon, run totally by Hezbollah. We got the interview with a militia guy that's responsible for that. This is the guy this is probably the most dangerous guy that we've interviewed in that film. The rest you do know. And we're quite really happy with the film. The only Rana already talked about the case of Hassan Dakku, but we found evidence that Hassan Dakku is connected to some guy that we think of as Ghassan Bilal, and he's very, very close to Maher al-Assad. And the circle went higher and higher towards the Assad's family. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I was talking too much.
Leap over to Mohammad and ask him to tell us about SIRAJ and some of the great investigations he's worked on and how difficult it is today to work with journalists inside Syria, but then how they have found a way to circumvent that.
Thank you, Rana. Sorry, guys, you are hearing too much bad thing about Syria, my country. So, from this point, I think we create SIRAJ as a network for investigative journalism. Now we are working and associating with different media platform in Arab country and international countries, media in Europe, and as you see, too much things to talk because the situation in Syria is very bad during the decade of war, and SIRAJ came just an initiative to find an accountability because we think the change in Syria is very, very hard. And through journalism, we believe that we can reach and we can hold power and we achieve the accountability. So SIRAJ as a network for investigative journalism and for Syrian investigative journalists, we try to force the power of investigative journalism and to give the local journalists, skills and resources to work with the international media just to reach our voices that we have bad situation and we want to go further just in this uncertainty period in the country. So during the 5 years, 2017 until now, we had like 50 investigative stories published and went to different platforms inside the Arab countries and international world. We have some key partners, collaboration with, as I hear, like OCCRP. We are a partner center, and we are partner and member center in the GIGN. Global Investigative Network for Investigative Journalism. We have also a very important partner in Arab countries, which is like SIRAJ, because always we need to reach the audience. We are not a publisher, we are like a machine of producing investigation, but we want to reach to the audience through trust partners, through independent media, and we found like SIRAJ and OCCRP is the best to work, because they afford us like help, consultancies, sources, sometimes money. So yeah, for our vision for Syria to actually to not hear these bad things about the situation, we're looking forward to make the situation better, give to the journalists the power to report about the violation against the humanity or financial crime. And we see everywhere now in Europe or in Middle East that Syria always in the hub of the in the violation and the corruptions. So we believe this situation will be changed sometimes. When, I don't know, but at least we create the track, and we are working on this. And we believe in the investigations, and investigative journalism will help us. During the short period, we achieved, I think, it's good results. We have so many partners, and that gave us a privilege and gave us a very important visibility in the world, and that encouraged the activists and the female journalists inside Syria to report about the female issues, about the corruptions, about the violation that they faced during the war. Other goals and long-term strategy for SIRAJ, we are looking to promote the accountability and transparency, to bring the justice to the victims also, because during the war and before the war, we didn't have this kind of justice, and because of the dictatorship, and we don't have free media actually. And after the revolution, we started to see very good examples. Always this journey, it's not rosy, and we had too much challenge in the operation on the ground. This ecosystem of investigative journalism in the Middle East, especially in Syria, it's very dangerous. So we have so many risks, but we are trying to skip it, to deal with, and last thing, we had some good example about the impacts of our investigation. This one of the latest investigation work with the OCCRB and different media platforms about smuggling phosphate from Syria to Europe, and this trade was benefiting directly the oligarch Russian businessman, which is dominating the phosphate mines in Syria. And they giving money to Europe country, which is paying the phosphate. And at the same time, all of this oligarch was on the sanction, but in the other hand, they were paying under the table the price of the phosphate to the oligarch. And because of this investigation, we put 25 individual persons from Russia and militia inside Syria on the sanction list. This another investigation about how the bad forest division in Syria, which is, you mentioned, dominating the properties of Syrian refugees, which is living in Europe, but they found their properties inside Syria being stolen by this kind of militia. And this also had very good impact. This kind of frauds and contracts between the militias, they stolen the properties. You can go to the website and to find more investigations. Yeah, thank you.
I know we're a little bit late, but I'd like you to, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to address them. We still have like 3 minutes. No, and I just want to say something personal about Mohammad. I've known Mohammad since 2008 when I was running SIRAJ. Mohammad is a real success story because Mohammad is like so many Syrians I encountered who basically had to leave Syria because his life was in danger. He took the boat to Europe. He was arrested in Turkey with his wife and little baby. Today he lives in France. He became a French citizen. His 3 kids are fluent in French. He created SIRAJ. He now speaks English, he speaks French, he speaks Arabic, and he's driving a car. So really he is someone that made something out of his life. Thank you. We have to go, it seems. They're pushing. Thank you so much.